Welcome to Police Academy Prep. This is Deputies. Today we will be going through the Law Enforcement Basic Recruit Book of the Police Academy, going into Chapter 8, Crimes Involving Property and Society. This will be the in-depth recording version where I read from the entire chapter and provide insight to potential test questions and real-life situations. Now, this chapter is more on the shorter side, around 19 pages, so I may not do a short edition version on this chapter. So let's go ahead and jump into the material. We have two units, Unit 1, Property Crimes, and Unit 2, Crimes Against Society. So first, we're going to start with people committing crimes involving property. They do this to interfere with or obtain money, property, or some other benefit from a victim. The primary result is to deprive someone of the use or enjoyment of their property. The secondary result can involve physical or mental harm to the victim. So we'll start with theft. Chapter 812 of the Florida statutes outline the elements of theft. Theft occurs when a person, 1, knowingly obtains or uses or tries to obtain or to use the property of another. 2, commits such actions with the intent to either temporarily or permanently deprive the victim of their right to the property or any benefit from it. And 3, takes the property for their own use or to the use of anyone not entitled to it. Robbery is different from theft or burglary. Robbery is a crime against a person because it involves some sort of taking directly from another individual. By contrast, theft and burglary are property crimes and lack this direct person-to-person element. Be careful not to confuse the two. Property can be anything of value and includes real property, tangible or intangible, personal property, and services. Services are anything of value that result from someone's physical or mental labor or skill. This includes repairs, improvements to property, professional services, public, private, or governmental communication, transportation, power, water, or sanitary services, lodging accommodations, admissions to places of exhibition or entertainment. Even though the victim of a theft may not be present at the time of the incident, they can provide information helpful to the investigation, such as a description of the stolen property, including unique characteristics and serial numbers. The victim can also tell you the value of the item and the last time and place that they saw it. They may also know who discovered that the item was missing and were there any witnesses to the theft. If the value of property stolen during a theft is $100 or more, but less than $750, the offense is a first-degree misdemeanor of petty theft. If the person who commits petty theft has 2 or more convictions for any theft, the crime becomes a third-degree felony. So again, third or subsequent. So if they have 2 or more convictions and then now they're committing petty theft again or any type of theft, it will become a third-degree felony. Theft of property valued at less than $100 or if the value of the property cannot be established, it is a second-degree misdemeanor. Grand theft involves a theft of an item with a value of $750 or more. The theft of an item specified by statute regardless of the value, or the theft of an item with a value of $100 or more from a dwelling or from the enclosed area of land surrounding the dwelling. Grand theft can be a felony of first, second, or third degree. Theft also includes identity theft and fraud, not just theft of property, funds, or assets. Florida law reclassifies theft to a higher degree if the victim is a person 65 years or older. Chapter 509 of the Florida statutes outlines the elements of the theft of obtaining food, lodging, or other accommodations with the intent to defraud. This occurs when a person orders and eats a meal in a restaurant or occupies a room in a public lodging establishment and then refuses to pay. When a business operator and an officer follow the terms of the statute, the court cannot hold either criminally or civilly liable for false arrest, false imprisonment, or unlawful detention. All right, retail theft. A business can also be a victim of theft through shoplifting, embezzlement, skimming from cash registers or petty cash, smash and grab attacks, hijacking or delivery trucks or their cargo, quick change artists, or theft of agriculture, services, or construction site materials. You can arrest someone for retail theft without a warrant, even when the offense is not committed in your presence. Retail theft involves someone working alone or conspiracy with others to 1. Take merchandise, money, or negotiable financial or legal documents, alter or remove a label or price tag, transfer merchandise from one container to another, or remove a shopping cart with the intention of depriving the merchant of the items or their full retail value. It is a felony to possess, use, or attempt to use an anti-shoplifting or inventory control device countermeasure to defeat the security scanner. The operator of the facility or law enforcement officer with probable cause can take the suspect into custody in a reasonable manner and for a reasonable amount of time for recovering the value of the property or for prosecution. All right, now we have a motor vehicle theft. So when responding, let's see. Ask the victim to describe the vehicle, show them where they parked the car, if they have their key, determine if a family member may have taken the vehicle, look for broken glass, drag marks, anything that maybe it's been towed. Call dispatch to figure out if it was maybe repossessed. Let's see here. Make sure if you do conclude a vehicle is stolen, determine its proper ownership. Check David to obtain vehicle information. Check any tracking devices. Initiate a BOLO. Find the plate number, the VIN. Enter it as stolen. When you recover a stolen vehicle, it's kind of the same process except backwards. Check if there's any damage. Check the license plate, see if that's still there. You're going to need to remove it from FCIC, NCIC, and contact the vehicle owner and either tow it or have them come pick it up. All right, let's see here. We're looking at dealing in stolen property. All right, metals, electronics, jewelry, and firearms are commonly trafficked stolen items. When a person sells, transfers, distributes, or otherwise disposes of stolen property, knowing or having reason to know that the property is in fact stolen, this person commits the crime of dealing in stolen property. If you have probable cause to believe that a suspect stole an item and the suspect resists reasonable efforts to recover the property, charge the suspect with resisting in addition to theft. All right. Then we're moving on to criminal mischief. Criminal mischief is the willful and malicious destruction of property belonging to another person. As outlined in Chapter 806 of the Florida Statutes, it can include injury or damage to property, such as graffiti or other acts of vandalism. For criminal mischief, document that 1. The suspect injured or damaged real or personal property. 2. The property belonged to the complainant. And 3. The injury or property was willful and malicious. Make sure to photograph the damage, canvass the area, etc. Nothing too complicated there. All right. The Florida statutes enhance the penalties for criminal mischief based upon several factors, including the value of the property. Criminal mischief is a second-degree misdemeanor if the property damage is less than $200. It is a first-degree misdemeanor if the property damage is greater than $200 but less than $1,000. The crime is a third-degree felony if the value of the property damage totals $1,000 or more. If the suspect has one or more prior convictions of criminal mischief, a subsequent offense is a felony regardless of the amount of damage. So if they just have one prior conviction and they're now committing criminal mischief, it is now a felony. Any person who willfully and maliciously damages any place of worship or religious article is guilty of a third-degree felony if the damage is over $200. So those amounts, you might ask, are they going to be in the test? Yes, I would plan for at least some of those to be in the test. I know for our test, they did the worship or religious site, so any damage over $200 becomes a third-degree felony. I believe, let's see, one or more prior convictions, make sure you know that. Subsequent offense is a felony. I mean, honestly, just of these 5, I would memorize them because out of the 5, they're probably going to have at least 3 questions, I would imagine, on the test from that section alone. So memorize all 5 of those and the amounts and the misdemeanor and the degrees. All right, trespassing. As outlined in Chapter 810 of the Florida Statutes, this occurs when a person, 1, willfully enters or remains in a structure, conveyance, or property without being authorized, licensed, or invited. 2, willfully enters or remains in a property after the owner tells them to leave or when a trespassing notice is posted. Having been authorized, licensed, or invited, a person is warned by the owner or lessee of the premise or by a person authorized by the owner to depart, and the person refuses to do so. All right, let's see here. In trespassing, a person authorized means an owner or lessee or their agent or any law enforcement officer whose agency has received written authorization from the owner, lessee, or their agent to communicate an order to depart from the property in the case of a threat to public safety or welfare. Let's see here. Okay, based on the location or intent, a person can be guilty of trespassing in several ways. These trespassing offenses are misdemeanors when the following applies. A notice against entering or remaining is communicated or posted and a person disregards it. Someone enters and remains on a property and intends to commit another offense. Someone stays on the premise after law enforcement gives them a warning. Transient person living in a residential property refuses to leave after law enforcement directed them to, even if the officer has a sworn affidavit from the property owner. Someone is not authorized, licensed, or invited to enter or stay on a school campus. A student who is suspended or expelled enters or stays on a student school campus or any other campus the school owns. Someone is on a school campus without legitimate business to be there. And then these following trespass offenses are felonies. Trespassing on a designated posted commercial horticulture property. Trespassing on a designated posted agricultural site for testing and research. Trespassing on a designated posted agricultural chemical manufacturing facility. Trespassing on school property while in possession of a firearm or weapon. Trespassing on a designated posted domestic violence shelter. launching a projectile using a firearm, bow, or crossbow across someone else's land with the intent of taking or killing an animal, entering and remaining on a designated posted construction site, or trespassing on a legally posted operational area of an airport with the intent to injure a person, damage property, or impede operations. So, in regards to memorizing these misdemeanor or felony trespassing, don't memorize them all. That's kind of a lot of information. I mean, hey, if you have time to, that's great. They're pretty common sense, the difference between the misdemeanor and the felony ones. The felony ones are all, trespassing on a gun with a weapon, trespassing on a chemical manufacturing site, shooting across someone's land and killing an animal. Like, all of these are obvious felonies, a little more intense than your average, student was suspended and came back to school. That's not going to be a felony, right? So that's how I would differentiate the two if you can't memorize them all. I would recommend memorizing some of the important ones. So, for example, trespassing on a school with a gun. I would memorize entering and remaining on a posted construction site. Let's see, some other ones like, coming back to school's misdemeanors. Some of those more like ones that make a little more sense that you might run into on a more often basis. Memorize those if you can't memorize all of them. All right, we're going to move on to burglary. Burglary is the unlawful entry into any structure with the intent to commit a crime inside. Chapter 810 of the Florida Statutes outlines the elements of burglary and classifies burglaries according to the type of locations entered, such as a dwelling, structure, or conveyance. Penalties are more severe for a dwelling than a structure or conveyance. For burglary, document the suspect did at least two of the following. So two of these following three. 1. Entered a structure or conveyance owned by or in possession of a complainant. At the time of entering the structure or conveyance, had the intent to commit a crime in that structure or conveyance. And 3. Was not licensed or invited to enter the structure or conveyance, and the premises were not open to the public at the time of entering. All right. Trespassing involves being somewhere you do not own without the owner's permission. Burglary also involves being somewhere you do not own without the owner's permission, but with the intent to commit another crime, such as theft. So they're kind of saying here that burglary and trespassing are very similar, except with burglary, you're committing a crime therein. Recall that robbery involves taking property from someone by force or fear. People will often tell you that they have been robbed when they were not at home. However, they have been burglarized. Generally, any damage caused as a result of an unlawful entry, such as kicking in a door or breaking a window, is not criminal mischief, as that is a lesser offense. However, when the suspect clearly and intentionally vandalized the home during a burglary, an additional charge of criminal mischief can apply. So breaking in through the window, breaking in through the door, that's still burglary. But if they did break in through that door and then graffitied the walls, busted up everything inside, you could then charge with criminal mischief. All right, the Florida statutes enhances the penalties for burglary when the suspect commits assault or battery during a burglary. That would be burglary battery. The suspect is armed. The suspect uses a vehicle to cause damage to the property. The suspect causes more than $1,000 of damage to the property. The dwelling, structure, or conveyance was occupied at the time of the burglary. All right, burglary tools may include screwdrivers, pliers, and wrenches, pry bars, or spark plugs, but can also be anything used to gain entry during a burglary, such as a rock or a concrete block. Burglars may use several methods of entry, such as entering through unlocked doors and windows, or using a hidden key, removing hinge pins, breaking glass, or kicking in the door. Other techniques include prying a door or window frame, slipping, pulling, or picking the lock, or using a bump key. Know that for the test what a bump key is. A key in which a suspect has cut the pin positions to the lowest level so that striking it at just the right moment will bump open the lock. Burglars may also use a garage door opener or electronic decoder for keyless entries. For possession of burglary tools, document that the suspect intended to commit burglary or trespass, had in their possession a tool, machine, or implement they intended to use in committing trespass or burglary. So remember, if you are at a delayed burglary, you see a rock on the floor or a rock through the window, make sure you are also, incorporating that into your report. If you do catch somebody, then obviously you would charge them with burglary tools at that point. Burglary is one of the crimes that you investigate most frequently. All right, you need to determine if it's in progress or delayed. If it's in progress, obviously notify backup, sergeant, perimeter, and your sergeant's going to request K-9 and helicopter at that point. All right, if it's not in progress, get a statement, do a walkthrough, figure out everything that was taken, document everything, do a bolo if possible, any video footage, get a time frame, etc. All right, now we're going to talk a little bit about agricultural sites. Probably won't deal with this too much, but let's cover it just in case it's on the test. Chapter 267 of the Florida statute outlines the elements of prohibited practices on agricultural sites. You may respond to a call concerning a violation of an agricultural site and still need to assess the scene. If you believe a crime was committed, secure and protect the scene, notify a supervisor, and inform local, state, or federal park rangers of the incident and any recovered evidence. It is a misdemeanor to walk on an agricultural site and remove an object. It is a felony to dig into the site to retrieve an object. Alright, so now we are moving on to white-collar crimes. The expression white-collar crime refers to a range of frauds committed by individuals, business professionals, and government officials. These crimes do not involve a threat of physical force or violence, but rather dishonesty, cover-up, or abuse of trust. Fraud. Fraud is the intentional falsification of the truth to induce another person or another entity to part with something of value or to surrender their legal right to it. Current forms of fraud can include credit card fraud, bank fraud, cashing a fraudulent check, and identity theft. Officers will most often respond to a delayed credit card fraud and file an incident report. Alright, in progress fraud. There are two aspects of forgery. Know this for the test. This next paragraph is important. Forgery and uttering a false instrument. Those are two aspects of forgery. Forgery is altering, forging, or counterfeiting a public record, certificate, legal document, bill of exchange, or promissory note with intent to injure or defraud someone. Uttering is knowingly exhibiting or publishing a document or attempting to cash a check by claiming the check and the endorsement are real. So again, forgery is the forging of the document. Uttering is actually using the document, trying to cash it, etc., and knowing that it is forged. So those are pretty easy to memorize. Uttering a false, forged, or altered record, deed, or other instrument with the intent to injure or defraud someone is a third-degree felony under Florida law. The most common types of forgery an officer may encounter are forged signatures or endorsements on a check, use of a fictitious name, and forgery by altering the signature. Alright, fraudulent check. The primary complaint for an in-progress fraudulent check is the financial institution. So the complainant is the financial institution for a fraudulent check. The victim is the person with whom the funds were drawn. So this is important, okay? Because it's different than credit card threat. For a fraudulent check, the complainant, aka the caller, is the financial institution, where the victim is the person with whom the funds were drawn from. So the check might have been from a business or from a person. That would be the victim. Before or right after arriving, ask the complainant if the subject is on the scene and get a subject and vehicle description, as they may pass you when exiting the bank or business. Alright. Let me see. Photograph the document if you do get it. Submit it as evidence. Okay. You may take the initial complaint for these types of incidents. However, an economic crime investigator typically investigates fraud. Alright, now we're going to talk about credit card fraud. The elements of fraudulent use of a credit card are outlined in Chapter 817 of Florida statutes. Credit card fraud is the unlawful use of a credit card to obtain property, goods, or services. This includes unlawful or unauthorized use of information to obtain credit by using any false, fictitious, revoked, or expired credit card number, or other credit device, or using any credit card without the owner's authority. Suspects will fraudulently obtain and use debit or credit cards through falsified applications, burglary, theft, or robbery. Alright, skimming. Know what skimming is for the test. It is the act of extracting a customer's credit card information by using a skimming device. The skimmer attaches to a point-of-sale device and stores the customer's information as the payment is processed. More sophisticated skimmers can be wireless. It is a felony if a suspect fraudulently uses a victim's credit card within a 6-month period, 3 times or more, or charges $100 or more on the victim's card. So it's a felony if within a 6-month period they use it 3 times or more, or charges $100 or more on the victim's card. The primary complainant for most credit card offenses is the account holder. So generally the caller is the person who has the account, where the primary victim of the theft is the issuing financial institution. So if you have a Visa card, you're going to be the caller because you're going to see a charge on your account. But when you have a credit card, the money's not yours, right? It's the person who gave you the credit. So if it's Visa, Wells Fargo, Bank of America, those are going to be the victims. They're the ones who are actually losing the money. Other victims may include the merchant where the credit card was fraudulently used and the person whose name was forged on the card. Alright, telephone scams. Some phone or email solicitors misrepresent a bank, government agency, or relative and threaten to arrest the victim should they refuse to pay a fictitious debt or provide money to bail someone they know out of jail. When responding to an incident involving any form of digital communication, such as phone calls, emails, or text messages, Be aware that the true location and identity of the user can easily be hidden. All right, let's see here. Make sure you know what Voice over Internet Protocol is. That's VoIP, VoIP, Voice over Internet Protocol. Services are one example of modern communication method, which allows someone to create a phone number and use it anywhere in the world where they can connect to the internet. All right, phishing. Phishing uses fake digital communication that mirrors a legitimate business to obtain personal and financial information from unsuspecting victims. Suspects use this information to steal identities, bank accounts, or credit availability. Okay, remember that when it comes to phishing, a suspect can hide their true identity by using internet, by being connected to the internet publicly at a coffee shop or something like that, or a not password protected network. In that case, the internet protocol, the IP address the suspect used, will belong to an unrelated innocent party. So you won't be able to track that IP address to someone's home. It'll go to a public coffee shop or something. All right, now we're going to go to identity theft. Identity theft is the unlawful possession or use of a person's identifying information to commit acts of fraud, such as apply for credit cards or loans, acquire services, establish or take over accounts, and commit crimes. You may take the initial complaint for this type of incident. However, a detective typically investigates identity theft. Make sure you have jurisdiction on whether the victim is a resident of your jurisdiction or if the fraudulent activity occurred in your jurisdiction. Ask the victim if they have any idea how their activity may have been compromised. If the crime occurred outside of your jurisdiction, file an incident report to provide a case number for documentation purposes and to allow for a subsequent investigation. Ask the victim if they want to prosecute, etc., etc. All right, animal cruelty. So signs of animal abuse can include starvation, parasites, mange, a collar that is too tight or heavy, lack of needed medical attention, lack of adequate shelter, living conditions that include feces, garbage, broken glass, inappropriate cage size, weakness, limping, or inability to walk. Chapter 828 of the Florida statutes outline the elements of cruelty to animals. Document that the suspect committed a misdemeanor cruelty to animals by 1. Unnecessarily overloading, overdriving, or tormenting an animal, depriving an animal of necessary food or shelter, unnecessarily mutilating or killing any animal or causing the same to be done, carrying in or on a vehicle any animal in a cruel or inhumane manner. A person who intentionally commits an act to any animal, or a person who owns or has the custody or control of any animal and fails to act, which results in the cruel death or excessive or repeated infliction of unnecessary pain or suffering, or causes this to be done, commits aggravated animal cruelty. In Florida, aggravated animal cruelty is a felony. The elements of fighting or baiting animals include breeding, training, and promoting any rooster or other bird, canine, bear, or other animals for the purpose of fighting. So again, you have your normal cruelty to animals, which is just depriving of food or shelter, unnecessarily mutilating, killing, etc. Is your misdemeanors, right? And then your felony is just going to be anything that's excessive or repeated, results in the cruel death, etc. All right, let's move on to loitering and prowling and disorderly behavior. All right, standing or waiting around idly or without apparent purpose is not a criminal act. However, to linger or hang around in a public area without any apparent purpose for being there in a place, at a time, or in a manner not usual for law-abiding people, and under circumstances that raise alarm or immediate concern for the safety of people or property in the vicinity, is loitering or prowling. Some things to consider in determining whether to be alarmed or concerned are if the person flees when a law enforcement officer appears, refuses to identify themselves, attempts to conceal themselves or any object, and will not explain why they are there and what they are doing. Do note that the fact that a person is out at odd hours without showing any other suspicious activity does not necessarily justify an investigative stop. You have to have more to it. So first, you're going to initiate a consensual encounter to dispel any concerns you may have. Explain exactly what you want to talk with them about. Give them a chance to explain why they're there. Be transparent about what could happen next, and treat them with respect. Just know that a loitering and prowling charge will require articulating your report, and in court, the totality of circumstances to support an arrest. Okay, if the person is able to ease your alarm and they can voluntarily explain why they're there, release them without charge. All right. Let's talk about breach of peace and disorderly conduct. Breach of the peace or disorderly conduct is not a catch-all statute. However, it does include brawling, fighting, or an affray. An affray occurs when someone consents to fight with another person to terrorize other people in a public place. Urinating in public is also disorderly conduct, not an exposure of sexual organs. Though I want to say that as of this year, that urinating in public or defecating in public are no longer crimes. So I want to say check with your agency policies and procedures and check with Florida state statutes to confirm that. But I want to say that is no longer a crime. If that does come up in your test, if you're hearing this on the video and you haven't spoken to your teacher about it, ask them about it. Like I said, I'm pretty sure that is no longer a crime. It's possible it's one of those things where they say, yeah, it's no longer a crime, but it still might be on the test because it's in the book. If that's the case, then answer accordingly. All right, to meet the conditions of breach of peace or disorderly conduct, according to Chapter 877, the person's actions must endanger the safety of another person or property and occur in a public place or on a public transportation, causing a public disturbance. All right, so for disorderly conduct, the person's actions must endanger the safety of another person or property and occur in a public place or on a public transportation, causing a public disturbance. All right. In this context, a public place means somewhere the public has a right to be and to go, such as a grocery store or hospital. For the offense of breach of peace or disorderly conduct, document whether the suspect's actions corrupts public morals, outrages public sense of decency, affects the peace and quiet of people who may witness it, or causes a brawl or a fight. All right. A person who simply curses at others or officers may not be arrested for disorderly conduct unless other factors are present that would threaten the safety of the officer or others. Unless the person's words actually incite a reaction from onlookers that might create a danger to others, such as shouting fire in a crowded theater, freedom of speech protects the person from arrest. When you are on duty, you cannot be a victim of breach of the peace. So again, if you're on duty, you cannot be a victim of breach of the peace. So if someone's cussing you out, freaking out, that's not enough to arrest them. All right, disorderly intoxication. Intoxication is more than merely being under the influence of an alcoholic beverage. Intoxication means that after consuming substances, a person loses normal control of their body, mental faculties, or both. According to Chapter 856 of the Florida Statutes for disorderly intoxication, document that the suspect was intoxicated and endangered the safety of another person or property, or was intoxicated or drank alcohol in a public place or public transportation and caused a public disturbance. The difference between disorderly conduct and disorderly intoxication is the element of intoxication. Taken alone, the person's admission that they consumed substances is not enough to prove beyond a reasonable doubt that they were under the influence. However, consider this admission along with other evidence. All right, now we're going to talk about open house parties. Chapter 856 of the Florida Statutes outlines the elements of allowing an open house party. An open house party is a social gathering as a residence that is legal unless minors at the party consume alcohol or drugs. This term does not apply to using alcoholic beverages or other substances as legally protected religious observances or activities. For the offense of an open house party, the Florida statutes require that the suspect is 18 or older, had control over the residence at the time of the party, allowed an open party at the residence, allowed a minor to possess or consume alcohol or drugs at the party during the residence, during the party, and knew that the minor possessed or consumed alcohol or drugs at the residence during the party. I want to be honest with you, that's going to be really hard to prove unless the suspect who's 18 or older is like, yeah, I know him. Yeah, I let him drink. Yeah, I saw him drink. Yeah, I don't see anything wrong with him drinking. I mean, unless he just willingly says all that, then this is going to be a hard one to prove. Just for some real life advice. The law expects adults to take reasonable steps to protect and prevent minors from engaging in these activities. All right. Let's see here. We're going to talk about illicit drugs and vice crimes. All right, there are many sources of illicit drugs in the United States. Drugs are smuggled, diverted, and intercepted from legitimate and illegal sources. You may encounter drug manufacturing and clandestine laboratories or cultivation grow houses through information from a concerned resident or while responding to a call from dispatch. All right, prescription drugs are not necessarily illicit. However, misuse of prescription drugs is common in Florida. People may engage in doctor shopping or steal prescription pads to misuse pharmaceuticals to meet their needs. It is illegal to drive under the influence of medical marijuana, just as it would be with any other prescription medication that impairs your ability to drive. The Florida Comprehensive Drug Abuse Prevention and Control Act, or Chapter 893 of the Florida Statutes, places all controlled substances regulated under existing federal law into one of 5 schedules based on medicinal value, harmfulness, and the potential for misuse and addiction. All right, so remember there are 5 schedules. Know that for the test. And make sure you know the Florida Comprehensive Drug Abuse Prevention and Control Act that organizes those 5. The Drug Enforcement Administration, DEA. So again, that is the Drug Enforcement Administration, the DEA. That website contains information about the schedules of controlled substances, facts about commonly misused substances, color photos, methods of use, behavioral characteristics, signs, symptoms, and duration of effects. For possession of a controlled substance, document that the suspect 1. Knew that the illicit controlled substance was present, 2. Exercised control or ownership over the illicit controlled substance, and 3. Knew the substance was an illicit controlled substance. Florida law provides the following definitions to clarify the meaning of possession. Possession, know these for the test, means to have personal charge of or exercise the right of ownership, management, or control over the thing possessed. Possession may be actual, constructive, or joint. Actual possession means the controlled substance is in the hands of or on the suspect, or in a container in the hands of or on the suspect, or so close as to be within readily reach and is under the control of the suspect. Mere proximity to a controlled substance is not sufficient to establish possession of the substance when it is not in a place that the subject has control. Constructive possession means the controlled substance is in a place over which the suspect has control or in which the suspect has concealed it. Joint possession means 2 or more suspects may jointly possess an article, exercising control over it. In that case, each of those suspects is in possession of that article. So make sure you know these different types of possession. Actual is actually in their possession. Constructive is in a place where they have control, so it's like in the car. And then joint possession is if it's in the center console and you have a driver and a passenger. If a suspect has sole possession of a controlled substance, infer or assume the suspect had knowledge of its presence. If the suspect does not have an exclusive possession of a controlled substance, do not infer or assume the suspect had knowledge of its presence. All right, drug trafficking. Chapter 893 of the Florida statutes outlines the quantities or weight of specific illicit controlled substances that increase a possession charge to a drug trafficking charge. Unfortunately, you need to know all 7 of these, as any of them and multiple of them will most likely be on the test. So again, these amounts and these weights will determine whether or not it's normal possession or it becomes trafficking. So cannabis, excess of 25 pounds or exceeds 300 plants. Cocaine, excess of 28 grams. Hydrocodone, excess of 28 grams. Methamphetamine, excess of 14 grams. MDMA, also known as ecstasy, excess of 10 grams. Oxycodone, excess of 7 grams. And LSD acid, excess of 1 gram. Trafficking in illicit drugs is a felony. Florida law requires a minimum mandatory prison sentence for drug trafficking. All right, let's see what we got here. Drug paraphernalia. So drug paraphernalia is all equipment, products, and materials of any kind that are used or attended to plant, propagate, cultivate, grow, or harvest, manufacture, compound, convert, produce, process, prepare, test or analyze, pack, repack, store, or contain, conceal, inject, ingest, inhale, or otherwise introduce a controlled substance into the human body. Pipes, rolling paper, straws, or spoons are not drug paraphernalia until you can prove that they are being used or intended to be used to deliver an illicit drug. Possession of drug paraphernalia is a misdemeanor. All right, now we're going to move on to vice crimes. Vice crimes, and make sure you know this for the test, include offenses such as alcohol and tobacco violations, gambling, and prostitution. Alcohol and tobacco violations are the vice crimes that most frequently involve younger people than 21. So again, under 21, alcohol and tobacco violations. Know that for the test. Any adult that provides someone younger than 21 with alcohol or tobacco commits a misdemeanor. Possession of alcohol or tobacco by someone younger than 21 is also a misdemeanor. All right, Chapter 849 of the Florida statutes outline the elements of gambling. Gambling offenses that you may encounter include bolita, a popular numbers game, especially in South Florida, dog or cockfighting, high-stakes card games, off-track betting, youth athletic events, or craps games on the street. For gambling, document that the suspect played or engaged in a game of chance, including cards, keno, roulette, faro, dice, domino, or other game of chance, at any place, by any device, for money or other thing of value. All right, prostitution. Chapter 796 of the Florida statutes outline the elements of prostitution. Prostitution is often associated with adult entertainment venues, massage parlors, escort services, and certain internet dating services. Street prostitutes tend to be located in particular geographical areas and truck stops. Prostitutes may be victims of human trafficking, especially if they are younger than 18. If a person is younger than 18, the law requires that you take them into custody and contact DCF. All right, organized crime. An organized crime operation has these basic characteristics. It has a specific structure, usually hierarchy or paramilitary. It has both criminal businesses and legitimate, for-profit or non-for-profit businesses. It provides a product or service in a particular market and rarely shares areas of crime or territory with other organized crime groups. And the loss of one source of income will not necessarily eliminate its profit. Just know that the higher level personnel of the organization are relatively isolated from liability. So the business structure is designed to protect them from infiltration by law enforcement and regulatory agencies. Organized crime is often associated with gambling, loan sharking, narcotics, prostitution, human trafficking, extortion, pornography, white-collar crimes, fencing, public corruption, numbers games, auto theft, drive-by shootings, adult entertainment, and money laundering. Some of the methods law enforcement uses to combat organized crime are asset forfeiture, concentration on vice offenses, intelligence gathering, interagency cooperation, and prosecution under the Racketeering, Influenced, and Corrupt Organization Act, also known as RICO. Again, that is the Racketeer, Influenced, and Corrupt Organization Act. And that concludes Chapter 8, Crimes Against Property, or rather, Crimes Against Society. If you made it to the end, good work. This is only going to be a 37-minute video, so no need for a shortened version. On this test, for the sake of... on this chapter, for the sake of the test, is only 19 pages. I would do your best to memorize as much of the content as possible. There's not a lot of content here, so I guarantee you everything, both important and non-important, will be on this test. So know the steps, know the elements, know these different types of crimes. Make sure you know the dollar amounts, like on burglary, theft, and criminal mischief, on when it becomes misdemeanor, when it becomes felony, when it becomes first or second degree misdemeanor, or third or second degree felony. Like I said, know the religious, like criminal mischief on a religious site. If it's over $200, it becomes a felony. Know the little things like that. What are some other ones in here? Know, like with retail theft, is second or subsequent, and it becomes, know for theft in general. If it's second or subsequent, then it becomes a felony. Know for criminal mischief. Actually, criminal mischief is second or subsequent. Theft is third or subsequent, and it becomes a felony. So with theft, you have to have 2 prior convictions, then it becomes a felony. With criminal mischief, they have to have 1 prior conviction, and then the second one becomes a felony. So know all those numbers, know all those amounts, know the elements, know the descriptions, know when things are misdemeanors, know when they're felonies. If you get that down pat, you will do well on this test. Good luck, guys. I will catch you on Chapter 9. Deputy Z signing off.